Hello and welcome to the Green 19 podcast, Packers fans. The Green Bay Packers are getting prepared for a trip to Dallas to face the Dallas Cowboys in the first round, the wild card round of the NFL playoffs. I am joined by Ryan Wood, by Tom Silverstein, and we once again will be headed south, thankfully, because it is going to get cold. It's going to be cold there too. It's going to be like 46 degrees, so I guess we're all going to freeze a little bit. But I want to start with the news of the day. We're recording on Thursday, and Jaire Alexander, who's pretty essential because the Cowboys, presumably their best offensive weapon is CeeDee Lamb. He will no longer be, we don't know of his availability, but he stepped on someone's foot in practice. He is day-to-day, I guess, as Matt LaFleur put it, but sounds like a bummer because it was just a walkthrough, and it doesn't sound clear if Alexander will be available. So Tom, I'll start with you. What that means for the Packers? I mean, obviously they've had success without him, but when you've got a guy like CeeDee Lamb, you'd figure you want your best cornerback available, obviously. So what does that mean? What sort of how did the Packers overcome that, I guess, if they're without him on Sunday?
Well, preparation is probably the thing that's affected the most. They may have thought they were going to match him up against CeeDee Lamb, and now they can't because they can't count on that really happening because they don't know whether he's going to play or not. So I would suspect that they'll go in with a game plan that they give whoever's covering CeeDee Lamb some help and try to get Alexander on him when they can. Maybe they can flip sides if he can play. But I think he hurt his ankle in this last game, and then he obviously did something to it. In stepping on someone's foot, LaFleur called it rolled on. So I don't know. I don't know if he can play. I mean, I'm sure if he can't run, he's not going to want to play because he's not going to be very effective. So they've been through this before. They had to defend Justin Jefferson this way. They've had to defend a bunch of other really good receivers. They haven't had to face the combination of Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, they definitely need him out there.
From what you know, Ryan, about the Cowboys, is he? I mean, they obviously have weapons. They're the best offense in football, so it's not a one-man show. But I do feel like if you can take away or mitigate CeeDee Lamb, I feel like the Cowboys are really beatable. Like they have, again, they've got other guys. Dak Prescott led the league in touchdown passes, but I don't know if the Cowboys can really function if you take away CeeDee Lamb. Easier said than done, but like Tom said, they took away Justin Jefferson when he was their number one option through and through against Minnesota. I mean, obviously that's a different quarterback, but do you think it's simple like that? Like if they take away CeeDee Lamb, if they find a way to at least mitigate him, that they have as good a shot as anybody in this game?
It reminds me a lot of when the Packers prepared to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because Joe Barry, after that game, after giving up the first perfect passer rating of Baker Mayfield's career, was very transparent about what he had hoped would happen. And what he had hoped would happen was you stop the run, you stop Mike Evans. And for the most part, they did that.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Evans had a touchdown, but they didn't give up much to Mike Evans. They had a decent day on the ground. But Chris Godwin, chew him up. Just absolutely went off. And that's the thing. It's very similar. You go in preparing to face this Dallas Cowboys offense. You are trying to stop Tony Pollard, and you're trying to take care of CeeDee Lamb. Mm-hmm. And if you do that, you should have a good day. Unless someone else chews you up. So that's really the task for Joe Barry in this defense, is making sure that they take care of priority 1 and 2, but don't have priority 3 become a massive problem. If they're able to do that, that's the recipe for success. If not, it might be a lot like that day against Tampa Bay.
Tom, what else? Obviously, the phrase house money is used a lot here for Packers fans because they weren't expected to be in the playoffs. 9-8, this is a successful season. But I imagine there's more that we could still learn about this team, especially if we're thinking about this playoff run, whatever comes next, as a springboard to next season. Are there still things you want to see? Obviously, you want to see the young kids play in a playoff atmosphere. That's number one. But are there other questions you still have about this team? Other things that we are going to learn because they get this opportunity to play in a playoff environment in Dallas?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're going to be seeing a big time pressure on their defense, and how guys like You know, and some real staple players like Quay Walker,
Yeah.
Devontae Wyatt, you know, Enoch Barry, Van Ness, even Rashawn Gary to some degree. You know, can the Cowboys just scheme them, use their weaknesses to their strengths, to their advantage? And I want to see how those guys react because, you know, I've seen playoff games where you know, San Francisco or whoever, Tampa, they just exploit your weaknesses. They just figure out what your weaknesses are and they exploit the heck out of them. And I want to see whether they can handle that, you know, whether their weaknesses aren't as great as maybe the Cowboys think they are. I think we'll know that. And mostly that's on defense. You know, I agree. I mean, I think CeeDee Lamb is really tough to stop, but you know, Brandon Cooks and Michael Gallup can hurt you too. Mm-hmm. And you know, if you end up giving each of them, you know, 90 yards apiece and a touchdown or 2 touchdowns, then you know, then they can still beat you. So that's kind of what I want to see.
The weirdest part about this game and this Packers defense for me is that they've made no sense this year. When they've played their best games, it's come against Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. It's come in Detroit on Thanksgiving. They held Justin Herbert under 100 passer rating. And then they got blown out, just demolished by Baker Mayfield. They couldn't sack Tommy DeVito. They gave the best game of Bryce Young's career. So, like, is that a good thing that here comes Dak Prescott? Because apparently they're gold against great quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And not that Dak Prescott's a great quarterback, but he's a lot better than Baker Mayfield. He led the league in touchdown passes. Is this? I mean, it just what would make sense is they struggle against Dak Prescott because he is one of the better quarterbacks in the league this year. That would make sense, but nothing about this Packers defense from game to game this season has made sense. So I'm really curious, like, okay, do they come out and shut down Dak Prescott because they did that against the best quarterbacks on their schedule this season? Yeah. I don't know.
There are some blueprints for slowing him down. Not everybody obviously has done it because they're so prolific, but San Francisco, Buffalo, they threw a lot of different coverages at Dak Prescott. Now, the Packers could throw 10 different coverages at him. Could they execute 9 of them, though? That's the question. You know, you can game plan all these things, you know, to your heart's desire, but can you execute them? And I think that's where the Packers could wind up in trouble. So, you know, Joe Barry comes up with these great, you know, half zone, half man combinations and things. That's what his defense is known for. Supposed to be confused quarterbacks, and only you got to have the guys who can function, who can execute it, and I don't know if they can do that.
So we will learn more about Jordan Love in his first playoff game, and you wrote about him, Ryan, at PackersNews.com. Did just a huge deep dive on his season and you know where he's had success. What did you learn from that process? What really did you end up taking away from looking at basically every throw he's made this year?
A lot. I learned a lot, which is why it's such a long story, because there's a lot that I learned. The genesis, the origin of this idea really came in early this season, you know, in October, when we just didn't know. Mm-hmm. I mean, we is he the guy or not? And that's what 2023 was all based on. Do they have the quarterback or not? We did not know. And so I started watching, tracking, studying everything about every throw that he made this season. And then after Pittsburgh, he changed. I mean, it was stunning how drastically he changed, like how quickly that change happened. It was basically overnight, but it was also stunning how many things changed. The most impressive to me part of Jordan Love's first season is how good he's been on third down as a young quarterback. Third and fourth down, he has 16 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. That's really good. His passer rating on third and fourth down this season, 102. 6 of his last 7 games, he had a 100 passer rating on third down. It wasn't just the Bears that he dominated on third down this season. For a young guy, he came in, and on the most important downs, he was lights out. And when I was talking with Matt LaFleur about this Saturday before the Bears game, he just deadpans. That's why these guys get paid. Yeah, and he's right. Jordan Love's going to get paid this season. A lot of that is because he's money on third down. He's money on the money down. But then you go to, the most important pass that I think he threw this season was that 35-yard touchdown to Jaden Reed on a corner route in Pittsburgh, because he was wide open. And through the first 2 months of this season, he was having guys get open deep, couldn't hit him. A lot of those throws are short. Some of those throws were long, but it was rarely just put it on him. He put it on Jaden Reed. And it's stunning that on one throw, everything changed. Jordan Love's passer rating, targeting 20 yards and more downfield, starting with that throw, went up 65 points to 120. 30 yards and more, it went up almost 100 points to 127. It was night and day. And it's still not there. This is one of the things Matt LaFleur and I talked about is, this is still the one element that he's got to get more efficient with if he's going to be an elite quarterback. He's shown that he can be a winning quarterback this way. But to be what Aaron Rodgers was, he's got to be able to hit that verticality down the seam, down the sideline. But it is getting better. Matt LaFleur is very bullish on everything else has improved. So he does think that plays that were taken out of this offense, like 2 of his 4 interceptions in Lambeau Field this season, on the same play. Matt LaFleur calls it strike. The perimeter receiver runs an out and up. The slot runs a skinny post. He threw picks against New Orleans and Minnesota on that play, and Matt LaFleur ditched it. And at this point, Matt LaFleur told me he's already planning to put strike back into his offense next season because Jordan Love's vertical throwing, his downfield passing has improved to that level. The other point that really stood out was in the second half of the year. Jordan Love with a clean pocket, he's had games where he's been automatic, and that's a starting point. That's what they're looking for. If you get the protection, can you make the basic read and deliver the throw? And Jordan Love does that. What he's done in the second half of the year with a dirty pocket when he's hit and hurried, he's only thrown 2 interceptions hit and hurried all season, which is really, really impressive for a young guy. And after Pittsburgh, his last 8 games, all 4 of his touchdowns when hit and hurried came in the second half of the season. His passer rating went up 25 points the final 8 games when hit and hurried. It was 62, now it's 86 in the second half. So that's really the mark of a great quarterback. You can't count on a clean pocket down after down. These defenses are way too good. What happens when things go wrong, when the protection isn't there? Can you avert disaster, and can you make a play? And more we've seen him do that. So everything's trending. All the elements that you look for in a franchise quarterback, they've all improved. They're all trending up. And it's just fascinating how quickly it all changed for him.
I imagine that some of the comfort there is coming from that offensive line where the pocket has been clean. And it's easy to forget this team lost a all-pro left tackle to start the season and in David Bakhtiari. And it hasn't always been smooth. They've been rotating some guys. Yosh Nijman, Sean Ryan have kind of been in and out of the lineup. John Runyon. They've got Rasheed Walker, who's still learning the position to a degree, I would think, in his second year. But he seems to have held his own. So Tom, I don't know if we have said their names enough. The offensive linemen seem to have really gelled here in the final stretch of the season. What do you think is attributed to that? Is that just an experience thing? Did they find the right combination? Because they're still rotating guys on occasion, which I find interesting.
Yeah, I think they're just better than they were. I think the biggest change is that they're a little more consistent than they were. We've still seen Love have to make some throws with guys, right in his face. He's made some incredible throws. The one to Bo Melton, of course, comes to mind, against the Vikings, where he had the peace of mind to just see him wide open, and but he had like 2 guys right up in him. I think they've been better. I think you don't see like as many massive breakdowns as you once did. I think there's still, some leakage that they have to be careful with. But play action has been really their friend. And the fact that Aaron Jones keeps running for 100 yards completely slows down the pass rush. And so I think that's helped them as well. They're kind of a work in progress still. And we don't know how they'll shuffle out next year even. But they've been good enough, and yeah, I think when they do really, pass block well, Jordan Love has really, really excelled. You know, he's really is able to step into his throws. He's a almost 6'5" guy who can see over the line of scrimmage. So he doesn't get many balls batted down, even when there is, you know, action in front of him. I think, you know, he's got the ability to be a really good pocket passer, and so that's helped. And I think the play action has helped quite a bit.
The 3rd and 8, the last throw that Jordan Love made this season, the 3rd and 8 to Tucker Kraft for 15 yards against the Bears. And I asked Jordan Love about this this week. But that was a culmination of his growth in one throw there. Because, and me and Matt LaFleur, we got into this when you know, we discussed this when I met with him. The way he coaches it, because you can't, if you're a quarterback, you can't have your eyes on the rush. You got to be downfield. So you got to be really in tune with your body. Any drastic movements that you feel yourself making, you've got to hit the check down. Early this season, Jordan Love's got that first-round arm, right? He's wanted to go deep a lot. And for a time, opposing defenses, week after week, they got out of their usual defense and they just zoned him to death because, okay, you want to throw deep, we'll just take that away, and what are you going to do? So they've been trying to drill into his head. Take the check down. Take the check down. That's a good play. Take the check down. And what does Jordan Love feel? It was a 4-man rush, so he didn't have any pre-snap reads that this is going to be a pressure play. But it is a pressure play. He feels himself make that drastic movement, and he immediately thinks check down, finds Tucker Kraft open in the right flat, gets 15 yards out of it. That's a play that Jordan Love might not have been able to make early this year, but he's gotten himself to that point yet. And then if I'm the Packers this offseason, I'm doing everything I can to shore up that offensive line to its fullest because, as you said, Spoon, his passer rating when he's got a clean pocket, when he sets his feet, it's triple digits. I mean, he is money with a clean pocket. So give him as many clean pockets as you can get him because his production's proven with what happens when he sets his feet and delivers a throw.
I got to think that's where they go in the draft. You know, that first pick still tackle, if that's, you mean, for the depth, if nothing else. But it seems like a logical thing for them to do. So it's a matchup with Mike McCarthy. We all know him. Not many people in this building know him. There's only, I think, a couple players on the team who were coached here in Green Bay when Mike McCarthy was here. Tom, Packers fans will point out his struggles in the playoffs, although there's also a lot of success in the playoffs, so I don't know if they can be really separated. But do you, in what you've known about the Cowboys, is he a different coach in any way, shape, or form, or is this the same guy, and will Packers fans notice some of the tendencies?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I intended to ask Joe Barry about what he sees about that too. But I think that the big thing is that you know, McCarthy has been good with you know, getting his talent together, and so matching his offense with his talent. And you know, they've found a way to scheme CeeDee Lamb open all the time, but they do have these other guys. He always seems to have injuries on his offensive line, and they always seem to find a way to get over it. I think that's like a really Mike McCarthy thing, and it's happened this year too. It doesn't matter. He trains his guys to be able to play all kinds of different positions, and they seem to get over that. I think he's evolved a little bit. I think he's changed some things, but you know, like LaFleur, he likes the tight end. He loves the tight end position. He wants that to be, you know, a position he can get down the field. And you know, the thing that the Packers probably want to take advantage of is I don't know that he's, you know, committed as much to the run. He never has been, despite what he said. And, you know, Aaron Jones can attest to that. You know, there were years where he just didn't give him the ball enough. And I think if the Packers can take away the run, or at least force McCarthy to run it, which means, you know, don't give him heavy boxes, flood the secondary, and say, go ahead and try to run it on us. That could be interesting. That could be interesting.
I wonder, just how to stop this defense, this Dallas defense, or stop it is obviously the wrong way, but how to survive it. They've got Micah Parsons, who's a name everybody knows. They've got a number of other playmakers in that secondary. Deron Bland comes to mind. They haven't even had Trevon Diggs, so they're still one of the top 5 defenses in football. What works here for the Packers? Is it the same formula and just like let the chips fall where they may? Is there any wrinkle they're gonna have to throw in here? How do you imagine the Packers attack that?
2 words, Aaron Jones.
I knew you were gonna say that.
It's a big week for Aaron Jones. Now, here's what's fascinating. It's been a frustrating season for him, right? He has 100 rushing yards in each of his past 3 games. It's the first time he's ever had 3 straight 100-yard rushing games in his career. Now, let's be very clear here. 29-year-old running backs are not supposed to be able to do that, and they're especially not supposed to be able to do that. Close the season, an injury-filled season, with 3 straight 100-yard rushing performances when they've had the type of injuries that Aaron Jones has had. But what you said, Spoon, I think there's something to be said of Aaron Jones has always split the backfield. He's never been the only guy in the Packers' backfield. All those, I've lost track how many times I've asked Aaron Jones over his career, should you get the ball more? And every single time he says no, but all those instances of keeping his mileage low, it's possible the Packers are about to reap the benefits of that because 29-year-old running backs don't do what he just did. But he's doing it, and his mileage is lower. And I spoke with Aaron Jones this week, and he told me, one, this is the freshest his body has felt, the healthiest his body has felt at the end of the season since 2019. So, the fact that he has missed 6 games this season, that's a good thing now. It's been a frustrating year, but he's benefiting from it now. 2, he feels like he's still just getting into his prime. Now, some of that is, of course, he does because everyone's going to always think that way. But he's very aware that even if it was, he never let on that it was frustrating. He didn't get the ball more. But even if it was in the moment, it has helped his career. It has helped him from a longevity standpoint be fresher later in his career than the shelf life for many NFL running backs because of that low mileage. So, the interesting thing these past 3 games, the Packers recognize that Aaron Jones is fresh, that he is healthy, and he's had 20 carries each of the past 3 games. They are riding him, and they're going to need to ride him again because what's the best defense this week is keeping Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb on the sideline, and that means you give Aaron Jones the ball a lot and have a lot of clock control offense.
I'm going to go a little bigger picture looking at their defense. They've got Dan Quinn, their defensive coordinator, is going to get interviews for head coaching jobs. They've got a couple guys that Packers fans will know in that coaching staff on the sideline. Al Harris, former, of course, Packers great. I think we call him great, right? He's in the Packer Hall of Fame, so we can maybe go that far.
Spoon's the judge on that one. See a Packers great?
He's good.
Yeah, he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Okay, so a very good Packers player. Joe Witt as well, a guy who was on the coaching staff when they won the Super Bowl. I was thinking about this because there were a lot of coaches fired this week about who might the next defensive coordinator be for the Green Bay Packers. If there is a next defensive coordinator, and there's a lot of great defensive coaches that are available right now. I mean, Mike Vrabel was just fired for one thing, Pete Carroll, and there's other guys out there like Jaire Alexander. We don't really know his future in Carolina. Antonio Pierce with the Las Vegas Raiders. All of these guys are potential defensive coordinators or head coaches next season. So do any of these names strike your fancy? I guess, Tom, is what I'm saying. And I do look at those 2 Cowboys guys because I do think they would be natural. Neither one has been a defensive coordinator before, but they've had a lot of success. So they would be, I guess, kind of a fit.
I don't know. I don't think I know enough about, what their roles have been. Calling plays and Matt LaFleur he can bring in a prospect, I think. But sure. I think he probably needs more of an established defensive coordinator. But these head coaches who've been fired, these defensive head coaches, they're not going to coach next year. In most cases, they're just, they're kind of burned out. If they don't get a head coaching job, they'd probably take a year off.
Sure, that makes sense.
Rivera's he's not going to take a defensive coordinator's job next year. Vrabel's not going to take a defensive. Pete Carroll's certainly not going to take a.
He'll probably stay with the Seahawks.
But there's other guys like Wink Martindale is now available, and he should do whatever LaFleur could do whatever he does. Todd Bowles could be looking for a job. That's a possibility. Evero is probably going to be looking for a job. If they let him out of his contract. There's a lot of possibilities, but that's kind of, well, maybe that starts next week. We'll see. I think Dan Quinn, to talk about the Cowboys and Dan Quinn, he used to run that Seattle defense that, the Legion of Boom. Mm-hmm. And it was a very structured, like, this is what we're playing, you try to beat us kind of defense, cover 3 defense. And he doesn't play that anymore. He plays a completely different defense and uses Micah Parsons as a chess piece to move around. Now, I think that they are going to do everything they can to take away Aaron Jones. I think they're not going to care. Whatever happens, they're not letting Aaron Jones. Mm-hmm. If Jordan Love beats him through the air, that's fine. They'll come back and match them point for point. But they're not going to let Aaron Jones just, that's what their strategy is going to be. I think LaFleur's going to counter by playing a lot of double tight end stuff and keep his receivers, tight inside. They'll try to run when they can, even against 8-man boxes. They've had some success doing that. But I wouldn't be surprised if they do a ton of play action stuff to their tight ends, like spring Luke Musgrave on them on the first play. They might throw it right down the middle if they're up there with 8 men in the box. I think we'll see a lot of double tight end formations. It helps you block Micah Parsons. So, you have 2 tight ends, then you can slide to any 2 linemen can slide to Micah Parsons. And then you still have someone outside, who can pick up the guy that you're letting go. Yeah. So, he loves his tight ends, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's the way they do it. And then they'll see how they got to try to establish Aaron Jones, but if they can't, then maybe they have to do a ton of play action stuff.
I just spoke with Luke Musgrave in the locker room, and just for what it's worth, because it could be gamesmanship, but he told me that the entire point of last week was just to go through the process of game week.
Sure.
He ends up getting his catch, takes a hit, feels good after. And now that he went through that, he feels like he's fully back. So we'll see if that plays out Sunday. But to the 2 tight end thing, that could be very beneficial to that. I'm just wondering, and I'm not saying, but I'm just wondering. We all look at it as Joe Barry being fired at the end of the year is a foregone conclusion, right? Is it possible that it's not? I'm just wondering.
I think there are a lot of people who are afraid of that in the Packers Twitterverse that you guys told me to stay away from.
Well, they'd have to win a playoff game at least, and maybe 2. I mean, they might have to go to the NFC Championship game for that to happen. And maybe in that case, he brings someone else on staff,
right?
Like, an old guy who can team, and he restructures the way the coordinator's position is. I think Joe Barry is very loyal, and he would possibly stay in that situation. Maybe, if they're willing to pay him too. But, if they lose, I don't think he's around. And if they win 45-38, I don't think he's around. I think they got to change philosophically on defense.
I'm with you. I'm completely with you because I watched the Bucs game too. I watched the Panthers game too, right? You can't just have good defense and then show up and, here, Baker Mayfield, here's a 158.3. You can't do that. But they are 10th in the league in points, so you can't say that Joe Barry didn't coach that was the knock on him, right? When he took over for Mike Pettin, he's always had a bottom 5 defense in points. He's got a top 10 defense. The Packers are 12th in scoring. They're 10th in points allowed. Now, the other really important stat, they're bottom half of the league in opponent passer rating, and probably a lot of that has to do with Baker Mayfield 158.3 and Bryce Young having 113 or whatever it was. But Matt LaFleur doesn't like firing guys. We know that. I'm just wondering. I'm not here stumping for Joe Barry, so don't at me.
You're just asking questions.
Just wondering.
The problem isn't the statistics or the scoring. Is Joe Barry getting the most out of the talent that they have?
Yeah.
Is he the right guy to coach the guys that they have? And I think they need a Dan Quinn who was like, okay, I'll remake myself because I got different kind of talent here. I don't have Richard Sherman, and Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas, in my secondary. I've got a different kind of a team. And I think that's what you got to have. I think LaFleur would like more of a pressure team too. Now he hired a guy who's not a pressure guy, so maybe he's changed a little bit. But they have good pressure players. They got to find a way to make Quay Walker the center of their defense. They got to find a way to get Van Ness and Gary and Preston Smith going even more than they are. So if I'm LaFleur, I'm looking for someone who's multiple in their schemes and not locked to just one thing.
Yeah. Who is the team MVP? I feel like, Aaron Jones is a candidate. Jordan Love's obvious, I guess, if you want to go the quarterback route. But I find that question difficult because it's a very balanced team, and I don't know if there's any one player they couldn't live without. They have had their share of injuries, no more than I'd say most teams, but got a whole regular season now that was very successful. Who was the guy that they couldn't live without? Who was the guy that really stands out and you would give that to, Ryan?
Other than Jordan Love. I feel like the question has to be who is the team MVP other than Jordan Love?
Tom
because when you have a franchise quarterback, the franchise quarterback is always the team MVP. So Jordan Love's the team MVP. But that's a great question. Because this is a team without Pro Bowlers. No
right.
Pro Bowlers
Zero
on this
Pro
team.
Bowlers.
One of 4 teams in the league, and the other 3 are picking in the top 5. This is a playoff team. I'm disinclined to say this guy because of the position. When you're a slot receiver, you're not an MVP, but I think Jaden Reed's the first name that comes to mind. He's a do-everything slot receiver, can be a playmaker in a variety of ways, and has been a big playmaker in a variety of ways. He comes to mind. And then maybe someone from that defensive front. I don't know. What do you think, Spoon?
Reed came to mind for me. Aaron Jones would be the easy pick, but it's hard to take a guy who was only played 9 games or whatever. My argument for Jaden Reed is that he has kind of transformed their offense. Made the slot receiver position special. And not only that, but he makes so many big plays and has become like such a team favorite. Like he is kind of inspirational to those guys because he plays hurt all the time. He's banged up. He's not a big guy. He'll do whatever they ask him to do. He'll return punts. He does the end around stuff. He can line up inside, outside. He's a team player. He's a very nice guy. I just think that he's that's the kind of guy who fills your MVP type of position. If I had to pick someone else, man,
It's
hard.
tough, isn't it?
I'll give you one that nobody's going to say, and he's not the team MVP, okay? But the most important player that nobody talks about might be T.J. Slayton, because to have an anchor at nose that has allowed Kenny Clark to move up and down the defensive line. He can be a 3. He's played 5 some. He can move everywhere in a way that he's never been able to in his career. And it's just, you don't have to worry about that anchor to your defensive line. You have so much more flexibility when you have that everyone kind of revolves around T.J. Slayton. The unsung hero, maybe, of this team, to me, would be T.J. Slayton.
A lot of guys on this team who just improved over the course of the year, really noticeable, and obviously Reed is one of them. They're rookies, so you'd expect that. But
I would throw Preston Smith in there too, in the unsung, because he's been. I personally thought his career might be starting to wind down. I didn't think he was in great shape when he reported to camp. He still looks like he's a little overweight, but he gets it done. He's been getting it done week after week. He had kind of a quiet beginning, but. He has been so clutch. He practically won the Detroit game for them, and every week he seems to make some sort of play that is important.
One more point on Jaden Reed. I think this is, as I think about it, this is why it would tilt, even though he is a slot receiver on this team, it would tilt it toward him being the second MVP behind Jordan Love. One of the people, I don't think people on the outside realize just how dang difficult Matt LaFleur's job was in October in trying to integrate not just the new quarterback, but all these pieces around him. And one of the things that Matt LaFleur said was the most difficult was losing Mercedes Lewis. Not because, look, it was an obvious choice, and it's been a great thing for him as the season's gone along because it drove a necessary youth movement at tight end. But when they lose Mercedes Lewis, all of a sudden this offense, which is predicated on the play-action pass, doesn't have any wide tight end that has played any snaps in the NFL. And that forced Matt LaFleur to completely overhaul his play-action pass system. Like, for a while there, they were experimenting with that 6 offensive lineman as kind of that wide tight end. He was trying to figure something out. But they've always still been, you don't have an experience at tight end. It's hard to operate in the middle of the field. But they were always able to get something done in the middle of the field because they did have Jaden Reed. And when you have a slot like that, Matt LaFleur has never had the ideal slot before this season. He's never had that ideal slot for his offense. Jaden Reed is that. And because of him, they've been able to get a lot of big plays in a variety of ways. But one of those ways is the middle of the field, even with the inexperience at tight end and all the overhauling he had to do with the play-action pass because of that lack of an experienced Y. So for me, that's when we talk about value, that has been the value of Jaden Reed, a big part of it, being a slot receiver.
Going back to Preston Smith, if you talked about that free agent class, that big free agency class, if you told me he was the one who was still here making plays with Zadarius Smith, Adrian Amos, Billy Turner, and Preston Smith, I'd have been surprised, but that's how it came together.
I remember talking to a personnel guy when they signed all those guys, and he said Preston Smith is the best player.
Really? Okay.
He said he is the most consistent. He never misses games. He can drop into coverage. He can rush a passer. He's willing to play the run. He was the most consistent guy of all of those. And I remember the guy saying, Zadarius Smith, they just tried to trade him. Baltimore just tried to trade him. And the Packers paid a crap load of money for him. And the money spent was better on Preston Smith than it was on Zadarius Smith. Although he did give him two good.
Yeah.
Well, he started off
really
better.
Years.
He was a better player those first 2 years, and he got paid more, right?
Zadarius?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But longevity.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think Pete Doherty just wrote about this last week, but guys don't have longevity in this league. I remember 2016, Jared Cook telling me, and I've heard it a lot since then, but he was the first to say, football's 100% injury rate. You play this game, you get injured. That's the way it works. Preston Smith doesn't miss games. That is a remarkable quality that he has.
Yeah, doesn't miss games, doesn't miss practices.
Yeah. All right, I know you guys don't give your official predictions until people pull up in the paper, but just maybe 30 seconds on any last thoughts you have on this game and what has to happen for the Packers to pull off the upset. Ryan, I'll start with you.
The more I think about this game, I'm not going to be wildly surprised if the Packers win.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are that way.
And my first reaction when the Rams beat the 49ers and this became final on the matchup on Sunday was, oh, that offense, this defense, it's in Dallas on that turf. But the more I think, I think it's going to be high scoring. I think both teams are going to put up points, and it wouldn't shock me. I wouldn't be shocked if I was leaving Dallas getting ready to go cover the Packers in San Francisco. I'm not saying it's going to happen. It wouldn't shock me.
How about it, Tom?
I'd be really surprised if the Packers won. I think one of the scenarios is going to be sort of like I've been thinking this over and over again. And so if you think back to 2013 when the Packers played the 49ers and Colin Kaepernick was the quarterback and they played out in San Francisco, and on his first series Sam Shields picked him off, took him in for a touchdown, right? And then after that he just devastated the Packers. And I'm like, that could happen to Jordan Love. First time out, Deron Bland jumps in front of a pass, takes it back. Okay, how is he going to respond to them being up 7-0? Maybe it's 14-0 at that point because Dallas had scored on their first possession. What's he going to do? you know, and so I kind of envisioned that being the case. And I don't know if the Packers could come back from a 14-0 hole, but you know, Dallas is going to come at them, and they are a good team. I don't know if the Packers are good enough to beat them. I just don't. We're used to seeing the Packers beat Dallas, and because it was Aaron Rodgers and Aaron Jones, you know. Aaron Jones has had some great games against the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Three
great
100-yard games against them. And but Aaron Rodgers was always kind of the tipping point. Mm-hmm. You remember, you know, they beat him with the Jared Cook touchdown. Then they beat him with Devontae Adams, you know, where they schooled some rookie corner, you know, at the time. And I don't know. We'll see. This will be Jordan Love's moment. Mm-hmm. And I'll be interested to see it, but I don't see the Packers winning it.
Can I make one more point?
Yeah.
The thing that scares me the most, because I other than that scenario, which I can also see being plausible, that, you know, if they get punched in the mouth early, this team hasn't really been punched. This quarterback hasn't been punched in the mouth. He has one interception in the last 8 games. He hasn't gone through a lot of adversity lately. That'll be interesting. But if it is close, and I can see it being close, the thing that scares me the most about picking the Packers is Anders Carlson.
Yeah, we haven't.
That's where I just can't, like, that's from extra points to minus 50-yard field goals. This is the playoffs where seasons hang on a kick, and I don't have a lot of confidence in that guy right now.
Yeah, I think really, even back to training camp, it's like the inconsistency suggested there will be a game that Anders Carlson costs you. I don't think that hasn't happened yet. So
I prefer to say their operation costs them.
Yeah,
sure.
I'm still not convinced it's 100% his fault. It's always, you know, the kicker can overcome a bad snap.
Yes.
But I would say that operation would scare the heck out of me if I were Matt LaFleur, and I would think about going for it on, you know, 4th and 3 at the 40 or whatever, you know, any kind of 50-yard plus field goal, or maybe even 33-yard field goal.
The 50-yard field goals are good. Anything under 50, that's when you get scared.
Right, right. So if you're at the what would
30.
it be, the 15.
Yeah.
You know, and it's 4th and 6, maybe just go for it, you know. But, you know, Aubrey missed 2 field goals in his last game. He's perfect going into the Washington game, and he missed 2 field goals. So who the heck knows? I agree. You know, Mason Crosby hit that game winner in the playoffs, and let's see Anders Carlson in that situation. Yeah, that would be interesting.
And he snuck it through, right? Mason Crosby just snuck, but he hit it, and that's what matters. And I don't want to hear about, okay, it's indoors, so this field goal operation will be fine. Anders Carlson missed an extra point in Minnesota.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't matter if it's indoors. It does not matter.
No. All right, well, that'll do it here for this edition of the Green 19 podcast. The Dallas Cowboys will host the Green Bay Packers at 3:30 p.m. Central Time on Sunday. The first playoff opportunity for the vast majority of this roster. We will be there to discuss it. We'll have lots at PackersNews.com both before and after that game. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We will catch up with you after the game. Hope you enjoy it. Take care.